So we estimate that there's roughly a 42 billion opportunity now. The co-op space is mainly happening offline so far, so only 20% of the overall co-op budgets go into digital, and it's now all moving online. And this is why we have such a huge opportunity here. And guess what? The big guys are going after it as well, and Amazon is probably leading the game here. They have a strong push in advertising. Everyone is talking about this, and at the same time, the rest of the market is following, and Google is also going into the space. So it's really exciting times because the growth in this segment is massive, and this is why we're having this conference here. So let's take a brief look at the two, Google and Amazon getting into the space, and let's go back in time a little bit. So in 2010, we saw Google being a search engine and Amazon still being that kind of, let's say, book retailer. And they were completely different, and nobody could imagine that at some point this would converge. But if you go then a little further in time, these are two screens from 2017. What we see here is that Google Shopping and the Amazon product results look quite similar already. So you see the search bar on the top, you see the navigation on the left side, and however, the business models are completely different. Google is driven by a CPC monetization model, whereas Amazon is selling products, getting the retail margin in, but also making marketplace commissions in the end. So somewhat similar already. However, just 1 year later, we see that things get even closer. So now Google Shopping Express allows you to buy products directly from Google. So clearly Google is going into the marketplace direction and tries to somehow get very close to what Amazon does. So from a user perspective, this is no big difference anymore. You go there, you click on the products, and you buy them right away. And interestingly, you see now on the right side that Amazon is also running ads. So apparently, Amazon came from this retail direction, and now they're getting into the advertising space. So with Google allowing users to buy products right from their platform, and Amazon having this advertising model, the only difference is now that the revenue composition is completely different. Amazon will still rely more on the retail margin, whereas Google still has mainly this cost per click model, but it's constantly converging and getting much, much closer. And of course, there are big differences, but we won't go into the detail. If we take a look at logistics, then it's entirely different, with Amazon having an approach where they try to own everything, whereas Google is relying on a more distributed logistics approach, shipping things from department stores and so on. So let's take a look at the latest developments. So Amazon has pushed the sponsored product ads, which is in the end, like Google, an auction mechanism where advertisers can bid on their products and buy higher rankings, premium placements on the websites. So Google saw that this is working pretty well, and they didn't want to miss this opportunity. So what Google did is they launched a similar product, helping their partners to also run sponsored products on their websites. And again, we see it's kind of going exactly in the same direction. Whatever Amazon does, Google is going the same way. And last but not least, Amazon recently announced to have an off-site format as well. So if you're an Amazon advertiser and people take a look at your product on Amazon, they leave the website, you can then retarget these people and get them back so that they buy your product. So they are extending the reach beyond Amazon. In the same way, Google has recently launched a beta where they allow vendors to add to the bids of the retailers and push the products more on Google Shopping. So it's exactly the same thing, Google partnering with retailers and extending the reach beyond their own properties. So we see it's kind of all synced in a way. If we compare the two, and I think this is the most interesting piece now. We have this competition between Google and the rest of the retail market against big Amazon. And what are the differences here if we go through? So we see that Google, with their partners, they have the retailers need to rely on a third-party sales force. So they don't have full control, whereas Amazon, they have their whole huge sales team and selling directly to the vendors, which is a big difference because they have more control, they can scale the headcount however they want. Then ad inventory, Amazon alone, they have as much ad impressions available as the whole rest of the retail market together. If you run sponsored products, for example, on just your own website, even if you're relatively big, it's a fraction compared to what Amazon has. And this is another advantage. And when it comes to control, that's also a quite interesting point because Amazon is doing everything. They have their whole product catalog and they bring in new signals, monetary value into the ranking algorithm. So if companies bid, they lift these products to the top, but they know exactly when to do this and when not. So only if the products are relevant, they cover the top slots. If companies work with any sort of third-party vendor, they rely on them to figure out when to show ads and in which order to show these ads. So there's a lack of control, and probably also incentives are not totally aligned because in the end, the networks, whether it's Google or Criteo, they try to maximize their own revenue and they not necessarily always care about how relevant things are. So another big advantage for Amazon here. And last but not least, there's a huge cost advantage. So Amazon is raising the budgets from their vendors directly. So everything the vendors pay for advertising goes right into Amazon's pockets. Whereas if you work with networks, some of your money leaks. There's some sort of traffic or sales tax included. So in the current situation, I guess the gap is rather getting bigger than closing. And this is one reason why we're all here together, because I think the rest of the retail market needs to figure out a way how to catch up and how to close that gap. And we have several talks today where we can go into some more detail and find out what could be done. And I think we will find some answers to this and hopefully at some point catch up and close that gap. A few tips for retailers. So we see that it's really important to own things. So for example, Zalando in Germany, they are the leading fashion retailer in Europe, and they have built their own media subsidiary. We have Jérôme Cochet, formerly Zalando, now dunnhumby. He will go into some more detail how to build this media subsidiary and how to leverage the relationships with the vendors directly. I think, although we are also partly a tech provider, it makes sense for retailers to truly own this and get demand in directly and get control, have your own sales force. Then, as a single retailer usually does not have enough scale, it's probably not a viable option to just rely on your direct relationships. So you somehow need to backfill demand, and you can do this by funneling in product ads, for example, from networks like Criteo or Google. So the setup we suggest is own a media subsidiary, own the relationships with your vendors, exploit it as far as you can, but then backfill with network demand. And we touched upon that point already. It's important to keep control of everything which is happening on the website. It's not an option to just rely on others figuring out what your ranking should be. You own your website, it's your own store, and in the end you want to keep control. If not, what can happen is that you make some ad money, but in the end your conversion rate drops, and bottom line, you might cannibalize yourself. And we have Brian Massey today, the conversion scientist, giving you some insights how you can actually test this and make sure that bottom line, this all makes sense and you don't fall into the trap of making some ad money, being happy about it, but bottom line losing. And we must find a solution to pay too much tax. If Amazon is getting 100% of the budgets and the rest of the retail market just gets 65, 70%, that's again increasing the gap. And we have several panels, the retailer panel, the tech panel, where we discuss these things and try to find out what are potential ways to have a more competitive market, to bring this tax down to a more healthy level in order to close the gap. And very interesting to see today as Google and also Microsoft are getting into the space, they are leveraging their shopping solutions, PLA solutions, and they already have some co-op features integrated. And Google Shopping is a large portion of a retailer's ad spend today. So we expect that this will get a lot of traction, so it makes sense to pay attention to the PLA co-op topic. And we have Irene Kögel today talking about this and giving some insights how this can actually be done. For the brands, it's important to understand that the opportunity is now and not tomorrow. Why? Because in every advertising model we see coming up, it's always an arbitrage game. Initially, competition is low, cost per clicks are low. If you're advertising on Amazon and you were the first one running the sponsored ads, you got a lot of traction and you could actually outcompete all your competitors in the market. If you wait and everyone has joined the party already, the opportunity is gone. So it's important to act now and find smart ways to capitalize on the opportunity. When we talk to retailers and sell co-op-related things, we realize that they are, when we talk to brands and sell co-op-related things, we sometimes realize that they are not really aligned in their efforts. So on the one hand, they're all trying to push direct sales, their own marketing efforts for their own website, selling direct, that's a priority. At the same time, they have their team selling products to the retailers, and they are doing something else. Sometimes brands don't want to compete against the retailers and they don't allow them to bid on certain products. At the same time, they are then handing over co-op budget. This is not fully coordinated, and I think there must be ways to unify this and streamline things a little bit better. And it's important that we all understand the rules of the game. And the rules of the game are that a retailer becomes a publisher right now. Like Google is a publisher and Facebook is a publisher. So we all want to make money. And that's totally fair. But we all play the same game, make the numbers look as good as possible. And I just recommend to take this with a grain of salt and really find out what you truly get, not just only rely on what is played back to you. Which means, in the end, become excellent in measuring the results. I would recommend this in general for anyone doing advertising. The numbers which are sold to you are not necessarily all correct and reflecting incremental impact. So it's important that you build capabilities to really figure out what you truly get. So all these things we will discuss in the course of the day in more detail. I'm looking forward to having a great day with you guys. Enjoy it, and I leave you some time for questions if you have some. Thanks a lot, first of all. Does anyone have a question? Otherwise, I would suggest that I hand over to our moderator. She's a true retail expert. She had her own startup, which she sold at some point of time. She's a speaker. She's the co-founder of the Commerce Next Summit and a Forbes contributor. Please welcome Veronika Sontsev. She will walk you through the day.